speaker is the wonderful Kath Cooper. I've known Kath since about 2014 and we've been delivering the incredible years together. Kath has been involved in the education sector since 1995 and she's teaching early childhood teachers about teaching. She's also a Gallup strengths coach, so is running her own coaching business and is doing a doctorate in gay visibility. So, hi there, Kath. Welcome today.
Hi, Cathy. Really nice to be here. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you here. And I've got a few things to be able to talk with you about today. And one of them is in that education sector. And it is around what are the challenges that you see in the education sector at the moment?
It's really tricky, isn't it? I feel like when we unpack the point of education, which if we want to go way back to the real beginning, was because the Industrial Revolution started, and so there wasn't people physically in the house to look after children, so we had to kind of do something with them. And that really served a purpose. Children were kept safe and they were entertained and educated, and there was opportunities for higher level thinking, and that really did change the world. The negative side of that is quite a lot of the education system was set up purely to get people to comply to requirements, which was very useful in factory settings. Do this, start here, pay attention, I'm the leader, you're the follower. And I feel like that's bred a generation or generations of people that are really ridiculously compliant, which is kind of useful on many levels, but also really, really problematic as well. So when I think about the things that I were educated on, I did my high school years in a bilingual unit, which meant that 4 of my 6 subjects were in Te Reo Māori. So that suits me very well. I've got a good understanding and grasp of using another language. But oftentimes the other things were not super useful. And when I think about my children now, and they range from 17 to 30, I'm not confident they're using lots of things they learned at high school. And sitting alongside that is actually, if they don't know that, we've got smartphones or we've got internet or we've got other ways of finding out. Like, easy example, I was adding up something the other day and I thought I had it right. Turns out I did, but because I can rely on a computer or a calculator on my phone, I just automatically went to that. So even my brain's not using that higher level math stuff anymore because I've got this backup. So I feel like some of the challenges is how do we prepare our children for a future, and how do we prepare youth to question and raru, it's a Māori word for kind of like turbulence, like just kind of muck it up a little bit, like, and respectfully. I'm not suggesting we grow a group of people that are like full of anarchy, but I'm thinking about just that. Tell me why we do these things, and having those questioners really is going to take us in a new direction. I feel really passionate about the possibilities of education and really despondent about the realities of education at the moment. Yeah.
And I'm so with you on that, Kath. And part of the reason why I'm doing this is that I had my youngest son standing in the kitchen 2 weeks into lockdown this last year, and he was just so angry and so full of frustration. And what he said to me was that he feels like he has wasted 13 and a half years of his life in the education system, and that nothing he's learnt at school is preparing him for the reality of coming out of school and being able to set off on his course as an adult, in this society. And he said that the only thing that he's found useful is the stuff that I've taught him, which is around that leadership stuff and, knowing himself and knowing other people, and the stuff that he's learned from the sports psychologist as an elite rock climber. So, this is part of actually what do we need in the education system now. So, what do you wish? What do you wish you'd learnt at school?
I really feel like there's so much potential, and the real genuine challenge is that barrier around parents saying, I want control over this language or I want control over this topic, and teachers saying it's not my job to do this. And I think we really need to shift both those minds in a different direction. So I would have liked to have had some budgeting skills. And I want those to be practical. So I get maths, understand it in its core concept. but how do I just actually take that and apply it to my life? And that stuff is really important for kids to know, or people to kind of understand. Soft skills, relationships, how to look someone in the eye, how to say kia ora or good morning or hello, how to shake hands sometimes, the range of handshakes. It's like, and it's funny to articulate out your mouth, but there's a level of judgment in a handshake. If it's too rough, I'm kind of like, oh, what are you trying to do? And if it's too fishy, I'm kind of like, oh, what are you trying to do? So it's an interesting concept that someone has to teach people how to shake hands, but it's that social interaction that's going to get you somewhere. How to stand up in a job interview, how to talk in a job interview, how to dream big. So Christina Carlson from Kiki K says, goals are one thing, that's fine, but we make them all specific and measurable, blah, blah, blah. That's also equally great. But dream, like what's your crazy dream? Then turn that crazy dream into a goal and kind of go backwards. But if everything that you ever desire has to be measurable, where is the dream time? Where is the time to just let all your crazy options go? Yeah. I'd love to have known more about gratitude. I would have loved to have known more about the power of writing. And I'm not talking about writing to share with people, just like I have a gratitude journal. It's one page, it's about this size. It's got 3 little sections on it. Every day, just something on there to say, where I live today, it's really, really rainy, but actually I can be grateful for something else. I can ignore the crappy weather and focus on something. I think self-esteem would have been massive in education, that being true to your authentic self and acknowledging other people's authenticity, right? Kind of like the you do you thing, at the same time as how can I help you do you? How can you help me do me? Like how do we coexist in difference, and how do we sit in difference in a comfortable space? How do we comfortably sit next to other people without feeling that othering? Yeah.
And so much of it through that, particularly in those teenage years where you've got that search for identity, isn't it? And even as adults, as the world has changed, that search for identity continues for many of us. And I'm sure that there's many teenagers that don't actually realise that search for identity continues.
Yes, it's not a before and after, is it? It's kind of like a bit of a linear.
Yeah, no, it's only teenagers that are finding their space in the world. No,
so
actually, it continues on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so that brings us into our topic for today, which is talking about gender and identity, because it is so huge a topic when we're looking at identity. And what does it mean as people are going through that journey for themselves, but also as teachers supporting their students to be able to go on that journey. So delighted to be able to talk to you about this today. What does gender mean?
Well, I'm going to caveat the whole conversation with I'm learning about this. And so if someone's listening and they know more, I would love to be in touch with you. I'm really curious about it as well. But I'm pitching this with my contextual knowledge and also acknowledging that this is the baby steps of learning about gender. So take these concepts and kind of broaden it. So in general terms, gender means how you self-identify, and oftentimes people will think about gender as being one of two options. So you either identify as a boy or you identify as a girl, male, female. It is way more complicated than that. So there is ideas that you can be gender fluid, which means that you are not interested in choosing one of those two options. And you can also be on some kind of, in a really rudimental sense, it's a binary, so it's a one or the other, but actually it's more like a circle spectrum where you can choose kind of a different spot in the circle where you will present more masculine sometimes, you might present more feminine other times. But gender is often the very first question a woman is asked when they are pregnant, or a person is asked when they're pregnant. So if we just kind of latch onto that last statement I just said, so I corrected myself. So I started by saying when a woman was pregnant, and then I turned it into when a person is pregnant, because somebody could have a pregnancy or be pregnant and not identify as a woman. So that can be a little bit confusing for some people, but if we take some of the gender out of our language, then it becomes a little bit more acceptable. So my autocorrect is when a person becomes pregnant. And frequently when a person is pregnant, the very first question people say is, are you having a boy or a girl? And so in some respects, that's fine. In another respect, I want to say, why do you want to know? What's your projected outcome? And also, the projected outcome reality is they then want to modify their behaviour. So you say, Cathy, I'm having a wee boy, and we say, oh, I hope he's strong like his dad, or oh, that's why he's kicking so fiercely. And then when he's born, we say, oh, he's so rough, but look at him being all those things, and doesn't he run fast? And if you say, I'm having a girl, we say, oh, that'll be lovely for you. 2 girls in the family, be nice. She'll be like your friend. And we feminise it all. So our gender and our, if we're leaning in the female or the she, her kind of area, we feminise those things. So females often look like you and I, have long hair, we've got lipstick on, we have feminine features. And so when we make those assumptions about what we can do based on our gender, that's when it becomes problematic. That sounded like heaps. There was heaps covered in there. Sorry, Cathy.
Yeah, there was absolutely heaps covered in there. But it was always funny when I was asked that question, when I was pregnant, and I would say, I'm having a baby.
Yes.
Yeah, but what? Well, I'm having a baby. I know it's a baby.
Yeah.
And people had interesting responses to that question.
And I've had 3 pregnancies over quite a long space of time. In my first pregnancy, I did not find out the gender of my baby. So I could not answer the question. That child was in utero 32 years ago, and so it just wasn't done. So whereas my third child, I knew straight away what their gender was, and it feels like problematic. I can feel people saying, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that, and they're right, there is nothing wrong with that lots of the time. But when you decide that the girl needs to be delicate and caring and hold the doll and wear the pink, and the boy needs to have the truck and be fierce and to stop crying, that's when it becomes problematic. And so when you've got 3-year-olds saying things like, you can't wear that t-shirt, Cathy, blue is a boy colour, or you can't play with us, you don't have your pink skirt on today, which are both true examples that I've witnessed, those things become problematic. And when we're trying to narrowly define gender and gender compliance, which means like doing the things based on your gender, that becomes really difficult for some people. Yeah.
Yes, and I've had experience about that in my own life as well, Kath, in terms of the way that I grew up and the things that I was interested in, which was not dolls, which was the outside, which was Lego, which was your train sets and all of those sorts of things. And one of my 4 sons being absolutely and utterly enamored with Barbie dolls and dressing and dresses and all of that sort of stuff. So the expectations that are on you because of the because of those questions of identity.
Yeah, and those questions of identity are called a dominant discourse. So a discourse is a set of patterns and behaviours that everybody does to kind of mostly get along. So things like, if you go to church, you will sit down in the seats. If you have a communion ceremony, you will put your hands out for your communion. If you go on the bus, you would pay your money. You don't go up to the bus driver and say, oh, I'm a bit skint today, but could I still have a ride? You know, there's social norms. And those things you've just described are those social norms. So when your son is saying, I want to wear a dress, or I need this clip in my hair and things like that, what he's doing is disrupting the dominant discourse. And that's bloody hard work, actually, because the dominant discourse is viewed as a way to control people, despite the fact that they think they're buying into something, genuinely think they've got choices and autonomy. They don't. Because if you think about when your son was born, you referred to him as a boy, you referred to him as male, you put him in clothes that you knew were gendered, yeah, then he starts to get his autonomy and he's like, I need a skirt. None of these things are working for me, yeah. That's really powerful and really difficult for young children and youth to do. So often young children will do a little bit of it. They'll wear the dress up in the childcare centre and things like that, or people will say, oh, look, that's okay in the house, but we're not going out looking like that, because that element of society controlling, yeah, because you don't want someone giving you a funny look in the supermarket. You just want to go get your stuff and go home. You've actually got 4 kids. He's just one of a group. And so
that's right.
You've got to keep it kind of as organised as possible, right?
That's right. And then you meet the guy out in Wellington who's wearing a kilt.
Yes.
And then you get, why does he allowed to wear a skirt?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you get the other guy that's walking down the street in a lava. And it's like, why is he allowed to wear a skirt? So these are part of the conversations that are there, that are part of that discourse, aren't they? And the cultural norms and so much that's a part of what makes identity.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thinking about, you ask a question around how is gender constructed? So how is it constructed?
Well, it's constructed by peers, really, a little bit like what I was saying about the pregnancy. Once we know what this baby is, we're going to put them into 1 or 2 categories, and we're going to construct their gender by making them conform to different things. So if I look like this is normal for a person who identifies as female. So our gender is constructed by the things that society tells us is going to help us get by. Now, historically, if we didn't get by in a clan, we could have potentially been ostracized. Okay, so we need a group of people. And I know this is going back eons, but I can't hunt something by myself. I need a group of people to hunt. So if I don't have compliance from that group, or if I don't have buy-in from that group, or that group doesn't like me, the highest possible outcome is that I die because I've got no food. Yeah. So this is how those kind of social norms kind of help keep us constructed and keep us wanting to be the same. I want to be the same. And that's why I want to acknowledge going out of those dominant discourses and questioning those gender norms is really massive. It's a very, very vulnerable space. It's incredibly difficult. And I think when people say things like, oh, they're just mucking around, or, oh, they're just trying to get some attention or something like that, that is not positive attention. Like, it's genuinely not positive attention. It is a harder, different life to live than if you were complying with all of society. So I think that making sure that we really are soft and careful around that space, and that we give people space to express their gender how they want to. I happen to express my gender in a feminine manner, but my wife doesn't, but it doesn't make her not female. It makes her a person that has short hair, likes t-shirts and jeans, and wears those things, but it doesn't take away her gender. Her gender is what she's decided it is. So that comes to another point around society in terms of when you look at somebody, you don't necessarily going to see their gender. You have to kind of make sure that you're clued up to asking the right questions or looking for the right clues in terms of their gender expression, really.
Mm-hmm. This isn't one of the questions you asked me to ask you, but it's almost like, does it matter?
Yeah.
Does it matter? Does it matter? You do you. You know, you do you, because it's almost like there's a judgment on people as they are experimenting on the way.
Yeah.
Does it matter?
So if I said to you this, yesterday I saw a film of 2 men walking along in a supermarket aisle. So somebody was filming them, they're walking towards me. One man had black boots on, black pants, and a black jacket. Yeah, can you see a picture of all that? Yeah, okay. So now I'm going to tell you the same story, and I'm going to add 2 more details. So 2 men walking towards me, someone's filming them. One person has black boots on that are high heels. and a black jacket that is feminine and see-through. Yeah, so it's just about gender expression. So when you add the two little extra pieces, your picture in your head changes from potentially looking like a masculine man with boots and a black jacket and black jeans. When you add those two other components, it can look a little bit different in your head. But actually, that person has the right to wear whatever black boots they want to wear, and they've got the right to exist in society in a way that is not harmful for anybody else. This is genuinely doing no harm. And if we create spaces for that person to have their own expression, whatever that looks like, and, you know, other than having big sharp knives off your shoulder pads and stabbing somebody, you're probably just fine with whatever you're wearing, right? And yeah, the short answer to your question is no, it doesn't matter. If you can physically do your job that you're paid to do or exist in society in a way that's not harmful for other people, literally what you wear does not matter. Yeah, you can't wear a ball dress if you're going to be using a construction saw. That's probably not practical. But other than that, it's like put some clothes on.
And I think so much of this is about being able to identify who you are so that you can do you in the world and be the person that you're meant to be and do the things that you're meant to be doing in the world rather than trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not.
Yeah, but I equally also want to acknowledge that pretending to be someone that you're not is incredibly difficult, but being your authentic self when that authenticity is different than the dominant is equally challenging. That is a really, really hard space to sit. And there's quite a lot of kind of support out there as well to try and help you with that. But actually feeling that peace in yourself about how you want to express yourself. So thinking about what brings you peace and practicing gender expression in safe places as well. The other thing to think about, Cathy, is it's never fixed. It can actually, you can change multiple times. You don't have to say, oh, I've gone from here to here and now I'm stuck. You can come around, backwards, forward, or up, whatever you want. You don't have to feel like this is my lot in life. The potential is endless in terms of how you want to express yourself. Yeah.
Just in the same way that we can change our clothes and we can change our jobs and all of that sort of stuff. It's who fits me best now, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll just tell you a quick story, which is really funny from my master's research. One of my participants had been pregnant and her hair was kind of not as luscious and gorgeous as it used to be. And so she thought, oh, it's just annoying, I'm going to shave it off. So she just shaved her hair off. And she was working in the kindergarten, and she went back to the kindergarten and she heard two children in the corner talking, and they said, is she a boy now? They're only just talking to each other. And the other child said, no, she's not a boy. She's just really ugly now. So gender expression had not changed her gender identity. But these two children chatted away and she's really ugly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of it, isn't it? Is what people say about us and what people think about us, and that's part of this journey of acceptance and discovering your identity. And I know one of the things that I've talked to with somebody I know very well, and you talked about safety. And so that awareness of where he is and how safe it is to be in that particular space. And I think that's true not only of gender but in all sorts of other areas, but particularly in gender. So how can we, as people working with other people in the world, help to create safer environments for everybody to just be them, to enable them to just do you know?
Yeah, that's a really great question. One of the things I think about is our experiences and our values and beliefs often come from our families. They come from the things that we were growing up with. So if I offered you something and you didn't say thank you, I might put a judgment call on that because manners was important in my family. If I don't say thank you to you and manners were not important in your family, it just wouldn't matter, right? So I think that one of our one of our things is we oftentimes believe that our beliefs are everybody's beliefs. So that makes things a little bit problematic. So just understanding that you have a value set from your own experiences, and that will be different than someone else's. So first of all, just acknowledging those differences, just saying, hey, this is my beliefs. They're not wrong. They're not right. They're just mine. And this person has these beliefs as well. So they're the same kind of concept. Not right or wrong. There's no value to the values. They're just them, right? When we know that, we can start to see people and what they're doing, that they just come from their own set of values and beliefs, and that is okay. So when we know those things, we can be a bit more accepting of others. The other really big tip about this is when somebody is presenting as gender diverse or possibly going through a transition from one gender to another or into a different gender completely, it is not their job to teach you. It's your job to understand. So if I present to you and say, I'm going to start a transition, I'd like to be called Keith, you say, thank you, Keith, and that's the end of it. It's not my job to tell you how I'm going to do that, why I'm doing that. Now that we're friends, so I might share that information with you, but actually I'm not your resource. So it's your job as somebody on the outside, if you want to be an ally, you want to be a support person, to find your own resources and do your own reading. So this is important, because if you think about one person that's transitioning and the circle of people they've got around them, how many times would they have to tell their transition story? So that's mammoth. So within my wider family circle, I've got 3 people that have transitioned. I've got one person that I was born identifying as male and now is female, and I've got one person that was born male and is identifying as female, and a third person that was born female and is now identifying as male. So I had to do my own reading and my own Curious George and kind of working out those things. And when they talk about something, that feels to me like I got permission to ask a question back, but I'm not initiating any questions. So and we've got one person that is about 16 years old at the moment, and they're transitioning from male to female, and they're still mostly dominantly wearing clothes that they have traditionally always worn. So when you physically look at this person, they don't look that different at the moment, but they're asking for a different name, and the name is feminine. So I have some questions. I'm kind of curious. I'm like, oh, don't you want a pink t-shirt? And then I catch myself and think, actually, I'm applying the same gender bullshit to this person than they've had as when they were identifying as a boy, or people thought that they were a boy. And so I'm grateful that I've got that ability to catch myself and think, actually, it sounds a bit bullshitty, really, because I've just decided that because this person is now female, or telling us that they're female, potentially they could identify as female from much younger age. I haven't asked that question. But the point is, it's not their job to educate me. It's my job to find out that information.
And remembering that huge gamut, as you talked about before, you know, that this is not just either one or the other, but but so many different things there. You know, and we haven't even touched the issue of sexuality in this as well, which brings in so many more different layers again. And does it matter? Does it matter?
Well, that's a completely different topic. So I'm glad we haven't touched on it, because oftentimes people will mash them together like they're one and the same, and they're not the same. So our gender and our gender expression is completely different than our sexuality and our attraction. So who we're attracted to doesn't impact on how we dress or express ourselves. So
And I think for so many people, you know, this journey to acceptance, we're fighting. You talked before about the cultural discourse, if you like. But if you look at different cultures around the world, so many of them are much more homophobic than others. And that brings in an extra layer of complexity as well, doesn't it? Where you've got so many countries in the world where actually by coming out as gay, you can be executed.
Yes.
And how do you do that sort of journey in
That's a real genuine challenge. And that kind of goes full circle into that comment that I'm saying, that the society's discourse, that dominant discourse, is so strong. And within those people, in those countries, that desire to live their authenticity, their authentic self, is so strong, they're willing to risk sometimes their life for that. So it's not a game. It's not something somebody's trying on for size. And it could be. There could be one person doing that, right? I get it, that could be somebody just kind of going, what does this feel like? Not for me. I'm talking about those people that get up every morning, that have a biological body that looks different than their body that they feel like they should have had or do have, or their gender expression, and getting dressed knowing that the walk to the bus stop could be dangerous, knowing that, you know, back in the States not that long ago, there was about 50% of the states that if you worked there and you were gay, they were legally allowed to fire you if they found out and they didn't like that. If they liked you, like, that was how fragile it was. If I slipped up in the office and said, oh, my wife, and they didn't like me, I could legitimately be fired on the spot, lose my job. So that means, because of the states, that's no healthcare for my family because I have to hide them. That's no healthcare for my children because I can't name their other parent on the birth certificate and all of that kind of jazz. So living in such a tightly held lie and living in that exposure and worry was one of the research findings in my master's, and I called that managed risk. So you referred to it a little bit before about when that person you were talking about goes out and they kind of think about where's the risk factors. So there's low risk, I'm assessing the situation, it looks fine. There's managed risk, okay, they look friendly enough, that person looks like they might be accepting of gender diversity. And then there's just unsafe risk where you make an assumption. And those could be places like your cousin's fine, your auntie's a bit like, should I, shan't I? And there's no way in hell you're telling granddad, yeah, because he's just gonna never have you back in the house again. And so navigating that safety all the time is really, really problematic. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not just those different family members, but being able to identify who among your associates, like it may be, I know that a lot of people in rugby teams, for example, find it very hard to come out because of the judgment that they fear from their teammates and so on. And it may be around the teachers, you know, who can you talk to? But, and so on.
If you're talking about coaches and things like that in rugby teams, think about some of the culture within that. So the boys go off and drink. Yeah, that's fine if you like drinking. If you don't, then you've disrupted that dominant discourse, which means that you've made that situation fragile and a bit vulnerable for yourself because you're not complying. But also you're sitting around, you're like, how come you haven't got yourself a girlfriend yet? And it's like, because I like boys, or because, you know, how do you break that dominant discourse? How do you say, look, I've finished with my rugby outfit today and I have got this beautiful pink chiffon dress that I'm now going to wear to the drinks tonight? Actually, you are a threat to that whole fragile culture of masculinity, of the rugby culture, of the team culture, of the compliance, of the safety in numbers. How do we work together as a team when there's an outlier? All of those things become problematic, and it's incredibly difficult to be your authentic self when there's not spaces created for that. So even things when people go, right, guys, and it's like, actually, I'm a woman. And if you want to know if their language is sexist, try using the other gendered word. So we've got guys, and then the other word would be girls or gals, right? So if you addressed a room full of people with the word gals, G-A-L-S, hi gals, and people said, I'm not a gal, I'm a guy, then that makes guys a gendered language because the opposite is a gendered language and you wouldn't use it. So this is not neutral, this is gendered, and so is this. So guys and girls are gendered. People fall into the guys thing and then they defend it by saying, oh, you know, it's okay, everybody does it. Yeah, okay, that might be true, but it doesn't make it right. So that's when those things become really problematic. And again, our society tries to make you conform and say, oh, you know, Cathy just being really nitpicky, or, you know, it's just an easy thing to use. What do you want me to use, ladies and gentlemen? You know, just silly things like that. So they try and shame you into advocating for something different. So I'm wearing a dress today. Yesterday I wore pants. Have you worn pants in the last week, Cathy? Jeans?
Every day.
Slacks? Yeah, okay. So how is it that you're allowed to wear pants and your son is not allowed to wear a skirt? Because those gendered things have really swung to a woman's advantage. So a woman can wear a suit jacket, traditionally a male thing, pants, boots. Yeah, what else do we need to know?
Yeah, that's interesting actually, that's changed as well, because many of the school uniforms and so on had very defined, you know, the girls wore dresses and so on.
Yeah.
And even at school, actually, I was one of the few females that wore trousers. From the minute that I could, I was in trousers pretty much every day. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's very, very interesting, the whole topic. So yeah, and it's a journey, isn't it? It's like it's easy to beat yourself up when you're making mistakes, and because we're learning, aren't we, on the way through, where it's again that self-awareness of what is the language that we're using. You know, we're doing the whole journey of racism that's in the newspapers at the moment, and people are starting to go, and I'm really delighted about this, but people are starting to look at, oh, actually, that's really interesting, how we're talking about that. And this is the same sort of thing, isn't it? It's that awareness of language and being able to.
Yeah. So when you first meet someone, if you're forefronting language conversations, you can say, you can start using your gender neutral terms. So if I refer to my partner, rather than saying what's his job or what's her job, you say, what do they do? So that they, like oftentimes people think, oh, you know, how many are there? Because they's often a plural. That's not a truth. But you can say, what's your name? And then followed by that, you can say, what's your pronouns? And it feels a bit weird because it's not something that we've done lots of. But you say, my name's Cathy. And I say, oh, what's your pronouns? And you say, she, her. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks. Same for me. Yeah. And then it's done. We don't need to kind of repeat all of that again. But it's just a really easy way of just kind of saying, I'm creating space for you to be telling me that what I'm assuming based on what you look like is different than your reality. Yeah. So if we go back to that person that is identifying as female, where I'm asking about whether they're going to wear a pink t-shirt or not, you would make some big assumptions based on what they look like, that they would identify as male. Whereas if you said, what's your name? And they said their name, and you said, oh, what's your pronouns? And they said she, her, then you would not be embarrassed because you would be on the right foot. And our teachers need to create those spaces, and they need to hold those spaces for children in classroom settings and also in the wider school area, in terms of going kind of back to that rugby culture in the playground, kind of making sure that those things are really forefronted and reinforced. Yeah.
And that's where it becomes much more problematic, isn't it? Because they can control the space within the classroom, where those individual teachers can, but it can be much more problematic, particularly if you're in a larger school, and that's where a lot of bullying can happen outside in the playground and so on. And also there's that the no judging, when people say, well, my pronouns are they, them, you know. Well, actually accepting what people say is important. Yeah.
And again, just going back to that loop, they then don't become your teacher.
Yes.
So when they say, I choose they, them, you say, okay, thank you, as opposed to, why? What's with that? You look like this and you want to be a they, them. This is kind of weird. What are you doing? Why aren't you a she, her? That might come out in the wash, but I might be standing next to you in the supermarket and never see you again. So you don't need to know. And then that's okay. Yeah.
So it's a journey that we can do together and all learn alongside each other and challenge each other and all of those sorts of things, and help us all be us.
Yeah. And I think you touched on a really important point before, I just want to reiterate actually, is being kind to yourself. It definitely is a journey and you're going to make mistakes. It's a little bit like learning a new language where you want to say, you're trying to practice Spanish and you say, hello, oh, hola. And so you're just training your brain. And actually, when you make mistakes, that's okay, because when you're making mistakes, you're learning, you're growing those connections in your brain to be something different. If you're not practicing, those connections don't grow and you're not going to improve. So you're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to forgive yourself. You're allowed to think, need to try harder in that area. And you're allowed to say, hey, I tried a couple of things today and I feel okay about that. That feels good. Yep. But if you're really, really passionate about changing this in your kind of way of thinking, I'd suggest getting a buddy. And so if you're working in a work situation where you can kind of reach out to somebody easily, tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then ask for some kind of level of accountability. So oftentimes teachers will say, okay, let's line up, boys and girls. And it's like, okay, so what you're kind of saying is everybody with a penis go here, everyone with a vagina go here. That's a little bit weird. Whereas actually all you want is just 2 lines to go to the library, right? That's the end of it. So just say, make 2 lines, we're going to the library, okay? And then when you're in the staff room, you say, Cathy, I did great this morning. I did that thing where I said, make 2 lines, we're going to the library. And because you know that's my journey, you can celebrate my success. And it feels really powerful.
And that's that accountability, isn't it? If you know you have to answer to somebody else, it makes it easier. And the other thing that I think is really, really important as part of this is to be able to apologise.
Yeah. But also don't bang on about it.
No.
Yeah. So when you get their name wrong, when you go to say Cathy and then you're like, oh, sorry, Kevin, don't put another thing on it. Don't go, oh, it's just that you're looking a bit, or you know, I've just known you 23 years like this. Just say, whoops, my mistake.
Carry on.
Done. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Yep. This is you. This is who you are now, and that's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this today with us, Kath, and for enabling this conversation to happen. I hope that it's been of value to the many people that are listening, and that it will help to spark more dialogue as a result of this, and more learning as we are supporting the people that are around us to just be them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very, very much.
Thanks, Cathy. Thanks for having me.